Right guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in a 2014 BMW M5 and the question is, as always, should you buy one? Yes. Go and buy one of these cars. It's literally the best way you can spend £25,000. Sure, I mean you could use that 25 grand to put down on a house as a deposit, but that's what sensible people would do. You don't want to live your life as a sensible person, do you? Under the bonnet is a 4.4 litre twin turbocharged V8 which produces 552 brake horsepower. It has a top speed of 190 miles an hour. Of course it's limited to 155, but de-restricted it will do 190. Of course you get that typical V8 burble, but it's not a raw, dirty sound that you get on some of the more Larry V8s. This is sort of quite subtle. I love it. It's a little bit more understated. In fact, the whole car is quite understated because it just sort of flies under the radar. It's not too loud and shouty. A lot of people wouldn't be able to tell that this wasn't just a standard 5 Series. Especially this one because it doesn't have tinted windows or massive alloys that Ali G would be proud of. I was never a huge fan of the previous generation M5. I know that V10 was glorious, but they were really unreliable. And I never really liked the shape of it. I didn't like the boxy stick-on exhaust because it looked like an afterthought. It looked like an aftermarket add-on. They were just too loud and too brash. And a little bit drug dealer-ish. And an M5 shouldn't be like that. It should be a businessman's cruiser that has the ability to turn into a brute. I thought the E39 BMW M5 was perfect, and this reminds me very much of that car. As I've said before, I think this generation of 5 Series is great. Not only does it look great, but the interior is lovely. I love the design of the steering wheel. I love the layout. The driving position is perfect. The interior is beautifully put together using some of the best materials. The leather seats are comfortable, soft and supple. The ride's not too firm. I think they're just spot on. It just feels well built and sturdy. It's exactly what you'd expect from a German car. So everything that I've just mentioned comes as standard on a regular old 5 Series, but what doesn't come as standard is the performance you get from the M5. It's astonishing. Until you drive one, you just can't get your head around it. Now, I've driven fast cars before, plenty on this channel to be fair, but the way that it just deals with the speed is unbelievable. It takes you by surprise almost, because you sit here in all this luxury in what just feels like a regular German saloon car, and you could be in any old luxury car. It's the performance that really surprises you. By now you're probably thinking, yes Matt, that's all well and good, but can it accelerate? Can it ever? Watch this. I think I just wheel spun that at 70 miles an hour. It's got so much power, this car. You really only use just a tenth of it, and nothing can prepare you for that explosion that happens when you stamp on the accelerator. It's limited to 155, but if you take that limiter off, it can do 190 miles an hour. 190. I know you expect an M5 to be quick, that sort of goes without saying, doesn't it? But the rest of the car is so refined and luxurious that it gives you this false sense of security. As you drive it and just sort of potter around town, you forget that it's capable of that. It's breathtaking, as you can probably work out by my dumb expression. You get this 7-speed semi-automatic gearbox. Now, because I'd never driven one of these before, I just kind of assumed it would be like the SMG on my old E46 M3. But it's not, it's a whole lot better than that. The SMG box on my old M3 is a little bit jerky around town, and the gear changes are pretty quick, but nothing compared to this. If you drive this car just normally, just in drive, without changing the gears manually yourself, it just comes across as being a regular automatic. Also, my old M3, the SMG gearbox on that, if you try and do a hill start, it will roll back. Whereas in this, it's got this anti-roll feature, so it holds it until you give it enough revs and you set off again. It really is an excellent gearbox, this. Far better than any DSG I've driven. But it changes gear so quickly, it happens before you even think about it. Then you've got the steering, which for me is perfect. It's not too assisted like you'd get in an Audi, so it doesn't come across as being too light and too numb. But it's also not too heavy. It's just perfect. You also get the vague burbling from the exhaust, but nothing too loud and in your face. The whole car feels light and sprightly and athletic. It's a big, heavy car, this, but it never feels cumbersome. I know what I'm about to say will sound a little bit sickly and cringy and a bit of a cliche, but you feel totally connected to this car. There's no other way to describe it. You feel part of it. It was cringy, that, I apologise, but it's true. There's no other way to describe it. And only the best cars are capable of that. As fast and powerful as it is, it never feels intimidating or frightening. It feels like an obedient servant. You think, right, I'm going to exploit this gap in the traffic, I'm going to sting it, but I don't want to spin it out and wrap it up completely. And it just does it. Before you know it, you're there. A little bit of wheel spin, but it's never dangerous. You feel like you're in total control. The only downside with cars like this, every time you get behind the wheel, you get a little bit cockier and you push your luck a little bit, and then before you know it, one day you will end up the wrong side of a hedge. But it flatters you as a driver. It can almost read your thoughts. It really is beautiful to drive. It's good fun if you're on a motorway or on a country road, and there aren't many cars that are like that. If you compare this to, say, a 5-litre XKR Jag, that is a handful to drive. This isn't at all. It's not intimidating in the slightest. I think my grandmother could drive this. This generation M5 has been around since 2011, so you can pick up an early high mileage one for about £18,000. One like this is a 2014 model with 45,000 miles on the clock and full BMW service history. This is worth around 25 grand, which is such a lot of car for the money. The trouble is now I just don't want to sell it. Might go and buy a lottery ticket. The ride is beautiful too. It's not too harsh or jarring like a lot of M Sports. I drive loads of different cars all day long, and rarely am I so impressed with a car. This M5 is something else. Really is special. You don't have to worry about finding an M5 with a great spec as well, because they come with a lot of optional extras as standard. For example, you get electric heated leather seats, you get a head-up display, so it means that you don't really have to shop around. Running costs are of course high, but that's just the nature of this kind of car. Road tax here in the UK is £570 a year, which is the highest bracket. I think the emissions are something like 225 or 230 grams of CO2 per mile, I think it is, or kilometre, which is way better than the previous generation, because the previous generation with the V10 was something like 330, so they're getting better. I just worry that the way we're heading these days, the next M5 is going to be some sort of rubbish hybrid. It just won't be as good as this. I feel like this is the M5 swan song, which is a shame. You'll average around 20 miles per gallon. Now today I've been averaging 17 miles per gallon, but if you drive it sensibly, I mean on a run for example, you'll get 24, 25 I imagine. It's not a Prius, don't get me wrong, but they're not too bad. They're similar figures that I was getting on my old 645. Insurance costs will be high too, and one concern that I have with this M5 is that they make really good getaway cars, so I just fear that it's going to get stolen, so that is one thing to consider. So yes, running costs can be high, but remember what you're getting here. You're getting one of the fastest saloon cars in the world, and you get what you pay for at the end of the day. By the way, I've got to say, don't buy one of these cars if you're trying to impress somebody, because it won't work. Every time you drive it, you just grin ear to ear like you've had a lobotomy, and you won't be impressing anybody. But do you really care? How good is that? What BMW have done here is really impressive. They've taken a standard BMW 5 Series, which is already an excellent car, and turned it into one of the best fast saloon cars money can buy. I mean, of course, you could buy an E63 or a Maserati Quattroporte, but I wouldn't bother. My money would be on the M5 all day, every day. I can't recommend it enough. So thanks once again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done already. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. So yeah, make sure you follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.